afternoon, students. Today we will be discussing the last topic of your fifth unit, that is problems of Indian society in the 20th century, fundamentalism. So we have discussed so far regionalism, casteism, and we have discussed terrorism. Today we are going to discuss fundamentalism. So let's get started with it. Now, before we begin with anything, first thing that we need to understand is what is the definition of fundamentalism, or what is fundamentalism. The term fundamentalism was originally applied solely to Christians who insisted on interpreting the Bible and particularly the Old Testament. So whatever was written in the Bible, the Old Testament, they were taking it literally. And thus, those people who were taking the literal translation of the Bible were known as fundamentalists. However, in modern context, fundamentalism is a belief that those who do not accept one's own religion but follows some other are unbelievers. The whole idea that people who don't follow your religion follow some other ideas are unbelievers. So if I say I am a Christian and other people, and I'm a fundamentalist Christian, everybody else following a different religion or a religion which is ideology which is different from mine would be called as an unbeliever, walking in total darkness and with very little chance of salvation. So what they really wanted to say in modern context is that fundamentalists are those who believe that my religion is the only religion, and anybody else who's not following my religion or my interpretation of religion is an unbeliever, and there is a very small chances for salvation for that particular person. Fundamentalism thus is an organized, all-encompassing movement which aims at promotion of societal goals, specifically in the light of religious enshrinement. So what is the particular idea behind fundamentalism is that it's organized. It's never haphazard. It's very organized movement which aims at promotion of societal goals. So the entire for society as a purified religious believers, and it is done in the name of the religion. So fundamentalism would always be attached to religion. Religion and fundamentalist ideology go hand in hand. Operational strategy includes peaceful as well as warlike uses and movements. So it's not necessary that all fundamentalist movements are going to be violent, or usage of religion is going to be violent only. There could be violence involved, there could not be violence involved. But we have seen in the modern context, since religion has become one of our benchmarker identity, that religious fundamentalism is most of the time, not saying all the time, but most of the time, it has a idea of violence attached to it. When the fundamentalist ideas are used to fulfill the socio-political authority of a religious community over and above the other's ideology, it's called communalism. So the term communalism and the term fundamentalism are two different terms. Communalism it's an ideology when your religious domain, your religious identity is used as in a socio-political powerful manner, that you want to have your religious community as more socially and politically powerful. That ideology over and above the other. So you other one of the religious community and say that these people from this particular community, we should be above them. That is communal ideology. It's very different from fundamental ideology, because fundamentalism is talking about a way of saying that my religion is the best religion, while communalism is saying my religion is the best religion and I should be over and above other people of other religion. So there's a very thin line between fundamentalism and communalism. There's a sociologist, T.N. Madan, who has pointed out that the word fundamentalism has gained wide currency in the contemporary world. According to him, it refers to a variety of norms, values, attitudes which either judge the fundamentalist or condemn them outright. So there are certain norms and values and attitudes which are attached to the concept of fundamentalism, and through that you either judge the fundamentalist, saying that okay, if you have all these criteria, then you are a fundamentalist, or you take that criteria, then you condemn the fundamentalist. That if you have these ideas, you are a fundamentalist, and then we don't like you anymore. So these are the ideas. In fact, the word fundamentalism has been used synonymously with communalism. Nowadays, we use fundamentalist ideologies and communalist ideology as a synonym. However, this word we have discussed that these are two different words, and thus they cannot be used as synonyms, and they should not be in fact used as synonyms. However, now fundamentalism has become a blanket term. It encompasses fanaticism, it encompasses communalism, it encompasses political fundamentalist, religious fundamentalist. All are then fundamentalism has become a blanket term. The example of fundamentalist organization, a movement, most of the fundamentalist movements are never individual movements, they are collective movements. They're often led by charismatic leaders who are usually men. So one of the primary features of fundamentalist movement is, first and foremost, it is going to be a collective, it's never individualistic. Second, it is always led by a charismatic leader. And third, it is usually men who are part of this. We have in contemporary time women also being part of it, but never as a leader. Fundamentalism leaders need not be religious teachers. It's not necessary that fundamentalist leaders or leaders who are the driving force of the fundamentalist movement needs to be religious leader. Example being Maulana Maududi, who started Jamaat-e-Islami. He was a journalist. First, it was started in India, and then post-partition, half of the Jamaat-e-Islami then went to Pakistan. Then we have KB Hedgewar, who's the founder of RSS, and then we have Bhindewala, who started Damdani Taksar. So all of them are not necessarily religious leaders. They could be. Bhindewala, you will see that he was, but not a religious leader of the Sikh community together, but yeah, a person with a little religious inclination. So now we're going to discuss about the impact of fundamentalism. Before we talk about impact of fundamentalism, there are certain things that I need to point out what actually fundamentalism is talking about. The fundamentalists are usually practical people, and they try to purge the way of life of all impurity. So what fundamentalists, all of them, you would see they are saying that so a change in lifestyle is necessary to be part of their movement. They reject all corrupt lifestyle, anything that they think is unreligious, or in context of Islam, it's un-Islamic. In context of Hindu, it's not part of the Hindu domain, and in terms of Sikh, it is not what it's written in the Granth. So in the Sikh Granth, so they want to reject all this. For example, the anal critique of traditional superstitions fill the way of life. Thus, Maududi characterized the present Muslim way of life as ignorant. Bhindewala taken off the fallen Sikh who have shaved off their beards, cut their hair, and do not observe the traditional Sikh way of life. So they're trying to make you believe in certain practices. They're trying to make you believe in certain ideology, certain way of life, and thus they are generally talking about a more religious lifestyle, a lifestyle that is driven by religion, and that too a very, very specific sort of a religion. Even within the religion, there are no space for changes or no space for any sort of vibrancy. It has to be very, very categorical. Now we're going to discuss the impact of fundamentalism. Fundamental rejects attempts at rational interpretation and prefer blind faith to the arguments based on reason. So, what fundamentalist leaders, most of them are saying that what we are saying is the true form of religion, and all of followers are going to blindly follow it. You cannot question that, okay, why this? Because it is said, that's why it has to be done. It demands a blind, strict observance of all the traditional religious prescriptions. There are basic three trends in the phenomenon of fundamentalism. First is fundamentalism are inevitably political. So it's going to be political, because if you are trying to choose something over and above other, you become political. Secondly, fundamentalist movements are also generally religious, obviously, because religion is entrenched with fundamentalism. So it's going to be political, it's going to be religious. And third, religious fundamentalism are hegemonic and anti-pluralist. It is dominating. It's going to dominate over everybody, and it does not like diversions. So it is anti-pluralistic. In country like India, where we've discussed in our previous classes also, we don't have a common ceremonious identity. So people in the Indo-Gangetic area have certain different traditions and certain different lifestyle of their day-to-day life, and their religion or religious practice or ceremonial practice are very different from people of rest of the places. In South India, you have different, but together we form a religious community. However, if you have a fundamentalist leader who's trying to maintain all these population, then he is going to try and make it very monolithic. He is going to try to make it very one, so that there is no difference, there is no variation, there is no diversion, there is no regionalistic plurality. So thus fundamentalism is inevitably, it's going to be very hegemonic, trying to, they have all the power in their hand. The leaders are going to try that. And second, they're going to curb any sort of differences or any sort of variation that is going to happen. Next, we have it is never in for dual identity. So as a person, you are going to have one identity only then. Fundamental do not adhere to modernization, obviously, because with modernization, you're going to have rationality. When you have rationality, there are certain aspects of your religion that you leave behind. You saying that probably this is not now very good for us to follow. So while fundamentalist leaders are going to say that is not a fact. So let's take an example of Hindu fundamentalist. We agree under section 17 that untouchability should be removed. However, according to proper Dharma Shastra, which are being followed by Hindu fundamentalists, caste is the first parameter, and caste hierarchy should be maintained. That's one example. Same goes with Muslim fundamentalism. According to Muslim fundamentalism, Sharia has to be followed at all times. So Hadith and Quran are the literal words of Prophet and has to be followed. Now, over the period of time, we've realized that situations have changed. Quran and Hadith were written in Central Arabia, and now people are moving away from those regions. So people living in South Asia and in Indonesia are not following what actually people in Saudi Arabia are following. So this is not right. This is why, because through movement to modernization, movement have started happening. Women are stepping outside even in Islamic countries, and they're trying to work. We have a lot of Muslim women leaders also coming up. So that is anti-Islamic. According to traditional Islamic fundamentalism, this is bad. So this is against it. Why women are stepping outside and working? Because of modern education that they have gotten. So this is also against the Muslim fundamentalist ideology. Jihad is another concept which if you look into a more modernized world, there is no place for it. However, according to Muslim fundamentalist, jihad is something that one has to follow. The sole idea of it that's written in Quran is that people who are kafirs have to be converted. No? And this in global scenario, when you have democracy, when you have nation states coming up, this ideology has to be curbed. However, Muslim fundamentalists are still asking for this jihad to follow and kafirs to be converted. So that's something that's always going to have a problem. So they are anti-modernization. Two fundamentalist movements in India that have created disruption in the country are Hindu fundamentalism and Islamic fundamentalism. So we will start with Hindu fundamentalism. To begin with, fundamentalist Hindutva is not the Hinduism practiced by millions of people. So it's not the concept that they are giving of Hindutva is not something that all Hindus in the region are following. It's absolutely not the same. However, they're trying to impose, they're trying to make that more people to believe that what they are saying, what their perception of Hindutva is the best. However, there are millions of people who are not following what Hindu fundamentalist idea of Hindutva is. Hindutva is an imaginary Hinduism which is essentially extra historical, extra religious, and political credo for those who want to make much of the ideology for their political ends. So, what they are defining about the concept of Hindutva is not historically correct, it's not religiously correct also, and it has a political backing behind it. Why is there a political backing? So that their political ends are met with that ideology. The idea of Hindutva was propagated by Rashtriya Sevika Sangh in 1925 after the organization was established by Kesar Baliram Hedgewar, a doctor in the city of Nagpur, British India. The initial impetus of RSS was to provide a character training through Hindu discipline and to unite the Hindu community to form a Hindu Rashtra. So the basic idea, the initial idea was to train Hindu discipline to unite Hindu community and thus create a Hindu Rashtra. He was much influenced by Hindu Mahasabha. He was also influenced by ideologies that was later on part and parcel of Arya Samaj also. And he was a Tilak guide, so he was a follower of Tilak also. So when Tilak talked about Shivaji and Tilak talked about Ganpati festival, Shivaji specifically, the Hedgewar was much influenced with it, and he started this in Nagpur, Maharashtra. Then became a core for Hindu identity formation that started taking place. Post-independence, we have the foundation of Vishwa Hindu Parishad in 1964, and the BJP emerged in the late 1970s as the successor of an earlier party called Janasangh. Now, we are going to talk about post-independence. Now, one of the main tasks of VHP post-independence was to create a Hindu religious identity. Now, students, we have repeatedly talked about there is no universal ideology behind Hindu identity or Hindu religion because there are regional variation all across the country, starting from Gujarat to if you even talk about places like boundaries, like very close boundaries, if you talk about Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, you will find the ceremonies that are placed in Uttarakhand and ceremonies placed in Uttar Pradesh related to religion are very different. Why are they different? Because the religion has appropriated the certain aspects as it moved along the subcontinent. So there is no one singular identity called Hindu identity because it's there in your ceremonies. How is an identity created? It's ceremonies, geography, topography, language, and we know that India is a pluralistic space, and thus there is no one Hindu identity. Now, the first thing that VHP then started doing was creating that Hindu identity. Hinduism is not codified and has been for many years a loose combination of beliefs and practices. So, suppose a tribal area now became a Brahmanical civilized area, so they still continue their tribal aspects. You know, they have a bargaining power with the Brahmanical ideology. Whatever they wanted to capture of the Brahmanical ideology, they did. Whatever tribal aspect they wanted to keep, they been kept, and that's why they have a very different sort of practices that they were following. The Hindu identity thus created is monolithic. Now, what Vishwa Hindu Parishad decided to do was create a monolithic that okay, if you're a Hindu, then these are the criteria that you need to be following. This is what should be a perfect Hindu. Now, Hindu fundamentalist organization have consciously created an imminent, ever-present threat to the Hindu identity from foreign cultures and religion, namely Islam and Christianity. So now they are saying that we always had a threat from outside, and thus our identity have to be safeguarded from other identity. Further, they have also tried to nullify any types of contradiction or tension, especially in terms of caste. Religions like Buddhism and Jainism, which evolved as a reaction to the violence of the caste system. So you must have studied it in your first semester that both religion of Buddhism and Jainism, Ajivikas, emerged as an anti-Brahmanical movement, and now they have also been incorporated into the larger Hindu religious time frame. Why? Reason being, because many Dalit, as part of political struggle led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, renounced the Hindu religion and adopted Buddhism. We have studied about that in 1956. Ambedkar had given up Hindu religion and adopted Buddhism, and with him a lot of Mahars of the Maharashtra region had adopted Buddhism. Now, it has to be an all-encompassing monolithic that I'm talking about. So you need to have a larger population which is part of your religious ideology. Thus, Buddhism and Jainism very slyly has been part of this Hindu religion. But today they and other people are termed as Hindu because all philosophies that evolve in the religion are now claimed for Hindu society. So their religion is also trying to be, managed within our Hindu ideology. It uses language of religious discourse. This is very important, that it talks about dialogues, that how religion has evolved, how religion is one of the starting point of everything. With increase in communalization of society, the fundamentalist components of Sangh Parivar have started influencing the society. Hindu fundamentalist organizations have consciously created an imminent and ever-present threat to Hindu identity for foreign cultures and religions, namely Islam and Christianity. The attempt of this fundamentalist movement is to impose their elite interest in programs of the present in the language of the past. So they're trying to put their ideology of present, and then they are taking it back into the past. It's not something that starting from the past, they are saying that, okay, this has happened. So first they're creating an identity in the present, and then they're trying to fit it to the ideology of past, giving it an antecedent so that people feel that this is always the ideology. This is about Hindu fundamentalism. Now we're going to talk about Islamic fundamentalism. So after the mutiny, several religious reforms took place in the Hindu society. In Muslim society, it was as late as 1866 that the first movement to reform the Muslim society was established. So some prominent leaders like Muhammad Qasim Noroti and Rashid Ahmad Gangohi set up Islamic Madrasa at Deoband in UP in 1866, which grew into a higher Islamic center and assumed the present name of Darul Uloom in 1879. Now, this Darul Uloom has been the institution which is carrying forward a movement that happened in Saudi Arabia called Wahhabi movement, which was a very hardcore fundamentalist Muslim ideology, in which it was saying that literal translation of Quran is the only norm. All other school of thoughts have to be removed. It is literal translation of Quran that has to be followed. And thus it has kept the fundamentalist spirit of Islam alive even today. Now it's talking about any other form of religion being completely shunned down. So it was a Sunnite movement, so all Shias were considered to be unbelievers. You had within Shiites, Sunnites, you had various school of thoughts. All of them were considered unbelievers. It was only Wahhabis who were considered to be the true believers of Islam because they were following the literal translation of Quran. So this was one of the fundamentalist movement pre-independence. The other one was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's Aligarh Muslim Society, though it was based on Western education, and the whole concept was to make Muslims get up from their unprivileged situation. However, soon influenced by Wahhabi movement, even the Aligarh movement turned out into a fundamentalist movement. Now, after independence, there were several other smaller outfits. So we had two Islamic fundamentalist party in the country called Jamaat ul Ulema in Hind and Jamaat al-Islami. Now Jamaat al-Ulema, which was opposed to creation of Pakistan till the end, withdrew from Indian politics after the freedom. The Jamaat al-Islami was divided after emergence of Pakistan in 1947 into two parts. Maulana Abu Allah Madudi went to Pakistan, while rest Jamaat stayed in India. These leaders were against secularism, and it was not until the 1960s that they were part of secularism. However, there was a certain part of Jamaat who were in Jammu and Kashmir which still did not accept secularism, and that is where you have the rise of fundamentalist ideology in Kashmir coming up, and that's where you have in future we will find in today's world also the Islamic fundamentalism in the form of terrorism is one and as a part and parcel of this Jamaat. So that is how we have Muslim fundamentalism in the region of Kashmir. Now next we are going to talk about partition and its aftermath. Now fundamentalism have shown that when we decide that our religion is over and above the other's religion. Now, in partition, what had happened was two nations were created. Now, after creation of these two nations, a Hindu majoritarian India and Pakistan majoritarian, Muslim majoritarian Pakistan, now both these religions then decided that their religion is over and above other, and thus violence was used. Political now, this had a very political overtone, and thus, rather than being more fundamentalist, it was more communal in nature. So we are going to study how partition came into being. So in 1946, government of British has sent a cabinet mission to India, and this was when negotiations started happening with the leaders of Congress to decide how the transfer of power is going to happen. So Britishers have decided that they're going to leave India. Now, how is the power going to happen? The cabinet proposed a two-tiered federal plan, which was expected to maintain national unity while giving large regional autonomy. There was to be a federation of provinces and state, with federal center controlling only defense, foreign affairs and communication. At the same time, individual province could form regional union to which they could surrender by mutual agreement some of their power. Now, both National Congress and Muslim League accepted this plan, but the two could not agree on a plan for the interim government, which would convene a constituent assembly to frame a constitution for the free federal India. Now, both of them could not say that who is going to be the head of the interim government. Elections happened, and we all know that Nehru came out victorious, Congress came out victorious, and thus Nehru was made the head of the Constituent Assembly. Then we see that the Muslim League walked out from the Constituent Assembly. On 20th February 1947, Clement Attlee, British Premier, declared that British is going to quit India by June 1948, but the elation of coming independence was marred by large-scale communal violence. The Hindu and Muslim communalists blamed each other for starting the heinous killing and competed with each other in cruelty. So all of them started fighting that we are going to fight, that you created this the entire idea of independence being delayed and you did not help us out, and that's how you have the entire thing happening, large-scale communal violence all across India. Finally, in 1947, March of 97, we have Lord Mountbatten coming to India, and after long discussion with the leaders of Congress and Muslim League, it was decided that partition has to happen. So partition became uninevitable, and India was to be partitioned, and a new state of Pakistan was to be created along with a free India. Now, as soon as the announcement that India and Pakistan would be free was made on 3rd June 1947, the princely states were given the choice of joining either a new state or remaining independent. So people started, Sardar Patel, the Home Minister, started then trying to make an Indian union. He went to Nawab of Junagadh, Nizam of Hyderabad, Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir to make them be a part of Indian Union. Now, we all know how that happened, that Nizam of Hyderabad, Nizam of Junagadh did not wanted to be part of wanted to be a part of Pakistan, but since the majority population was Hindu, it was decided that plebiscite is going to happen, and that it was in favor of India. Nizam of Hyderabad made an attempt to claim an independent status, but was forced to accede in 1948. The Maharaja of Kashmir also delayed accession to India, but in October 1947, it was made part of India. Now, as soon as on 3rd June 1947, the plan was accepted that India is now going to be divided into two parts, Pakistan and India. Communal hostilities for some time was worked out. However, as soon as there was announcement of Radcliffe Award, that is the line that would be drawing, dividing what would be Pakistan and what would be India, that's when we have large scale violence started happening in both West Punjab and East Punjab. Muslim League in the Punjab declared that it would not resist any change in the notional division of the province. The Sikhs immediately launched a violence, and the situation once more began to deteriorate. After this happened, and there were serious disturbances in Lahore, Sialkot, Gujranwala district, and massacre of unprecedented scale started happening. And in a reaction to it, anti-Muslim reaction started happening in Amritsar. So in both the places, there were large-scale killing of Hindus and Sikhs in West Punjab, and in retaliation, Muslims were being killed in East Punjab and also in rest of the country. You have to understand that in Pakistan, millions of people were uprooted from their place. That has a mental trauma. Those mental trauma, plus losing your loved ones, your women folk getting abducted, and rape and violence being used against women. Now, students, that is a very important aspect, and I would like you to watch movie like Pincher, where you can understand why violence against women was used as a better measure than violence in general. Why was it considered? The Holocaust in Western Pakistan had its repercussion in East Pakistan. The spirit of revenge was widespread. Communal bitterness and frenzied in rest of the India. All Muslims all across India were challenged. They were not safe, and same goes with Hindus and Sikhs who were staying in West Pakistan. To an extent that when refugees started coming to Delhi, there were violence within the Delhi, and the government had to ensure that property are not targeted within the Delhi. In Delhi also, post 1947, we find that there were communal violence within the city. According to official data by both the Indian and Pakistan government, the partition displaced between 10 to 12 million people along the religious line, creating overwhelming refugee crisis, and somewhere around 2 million people were killed during this entire phase. So this is how partition happened, and after that it was just a frenzy where people could not understand what was going on. Your own neighbors were trying to kill you. Neighbors with whom you had cordial relation was suddenly becoming your enemies just on the basis of religion, and that too motivated by somebody else, by political leaders. There are n number of literature, n number of movies that you can watch and understand what is partition. There is Tamas by Bhish Pisani, amazing book that you can read. You can watch Pinja, you can watch Kalam Hawa. In fact, any movie on partition that you could watch is going to give you an idea that what was partition and how the trauma of partition is still alive. It's not gone. Like the Holocaust that happened in Germany, it's still alive, and Germany tried to build itself. We also tried to build itself, but the nightmares of that dent in our history is still continuing. And with that, we come to an end for today's lecture, and hope you have a good time.